This saucer was created using what's known as a slump mold. So I rolled the slab, flopped it into this plate, which was covered with saran wrap, pressed it down so that it molded with the saucer, and then I trimmed the edge, and then I wiped the edge with a damp sponge to smooth it out, and I let it dry overnight. It's now what is called leather hard. How can you tell it's leather hard? Well, it's hard to the touch. It feels cold. It's still dark in color, as if the clay is still wet. But if I tried to bend it or mold it at this point, it would crack. But the dark color and the coldness to the touch are dead giveaways that it is now leather hard, as is the fact that the slab is not flopping or sticky anymore. At this point, in its leather hard state, I'm going to paint the front of it with 2 coats of black underglaze. So underglaze, when it's fired, is kind of chalky to the, it's not shiny or glossy unless it's covered with a clear glaze. So what we're going to be doing with the underglaze is we're going to be coating the entire top of this plate with it. Then we're going to be carving it, and then we're going to be bisque firing it. And then after it's bisque fired, we'll put a few coats of clear glaze on top, and then it's going to be glaze fired, and it should look quite beautiful. So this is 1 coat of underglaze. I need to put 2 coats on, but I need to let the first coat dry before I add the second coat, because if you don't let the first coat dry, you're not really adding a second coat. You're just moving around the wet underglaze underneath. So while it's drying, I'm going to show you a bowl that I made using the same technique. I painted it with 2 coats of underglaze. I let them dry. It was on leather hard clay. You can tell it's dry because it is chalky to the touch and no color comes off when I touch it. If it's a little bit wet, you'll see that you get a little bit of black on your hands when you touch it. After it dried, I took some carving tools, which I will show you right now, and I carved this design. So these are the carving tools I used. This round tool, this flat tool, and these 2 triangular angled tools. And what I did was I held the bowl up like this and I carved, and as I carved, the little crumbs came up on the tool and fell onto this piece of brown paper, which I then was able to dump off into the garbage. By doing that, by holding it at an angle and by waiting for the underglaze to dry, and by using these tools that remove some of the clay as I'm working, I was able to avoid the crumbs getting embedded in my design. Just a little vocabulary. This bowl was created by using what's called a hump mold, which is when you take the upside down bowl, put a little bit of saran wrap over it, and you roll a slab, and you put the slab on the hump of the bowl and then trim it and shape it and allow it to dry. That's called a hump mold. And the plate is made creating what's called a slump mold, because you do the opposite. You put the saran wrap on the inside of the plate, you drape the slab on top, you press it into the mold, you trim the outside and trim it with a sponge, and smooth it with a sponge, and the slab is able to slump into the paper plate. So this is a slump mold, and this is a hump mold because you're flopping the slab over the hump. Now I think my plate is dry enough to add my second coat, and then I probably have to wait a few hours to carve it. Let me see if I'm ready to add my second coat. Okay, still a little wet, but I'm going to go ahead and add my second coat now. And then I need to wait a few hours. My students will be waiting overnight. What I'll probably do is I'll come back at the end of the school day and lightly drape their work under with plastic so that it can, the underglaze can dry overnight, but the clay can remain leather hard. If the clay is too dry, you can't carve into it. So stay tuned for part 2 of this project. Okay, so we're back, and I want to show you that this is now dry. I'm going to take my finger, which is relatively clean, and I'm going to wipe it over here, and you can see that I'm not getting any color off of my finger. So now I'm going to start carving. Now when you carve, the most important thing is that let me zoom out just a tiny bit. Okay, I want to make sure that the crumbs don't fall onto the artwork. So I'm going to hold this at an angle. Okay, and I'm using the point of this carving tool to pull the clay along, and as you can see, there's a ribbon that comes up, and that ribbon is going to fall onto the brown paper that I've put here, as opposed to falling onto the artwork and sticking to it. If you wait until the underglaze is dry, but the clay is not dry, then you can carve very, very neatly. If the clay is too hard, you're going to get splinters and cracks. And if the underglaze is too wet, you're going to get crumbs sticking in the paint. So you got to do it just right. So the way I'm holding this at an angle, with my hand splayed on the back, very gently, supporting the form as I carve. Now what I'm doing is I'm turning the plate as I'm carving so that I get a somewhat symmetrically balanced design. It's not mathematically like a mandala design. It's not exact, it just has a pleasing look to it. Also trying not to carve so deeply into the plate that I damage the structure of the plate. I don't want that. The other thing that I can do is I can use different tools to make different types of lines. This is a wire loop, so I can use it to make somewhat fatter lines. And you can play around with positive and negative space this way. Another thing that the loop is good for is making little dots or circles. And that can be kind of fun, make little pretty patterns. Another good technique is to, whatever line you make, and now I'm going to just zoom in a little to show you, whatever line you make, try making 2 of that line that are parallel to each other, so it's almost like you are carving a little road. And if you do that, then you can get interesting overlapping designs as well. So I'm gonna make this into a road, And then I'm going to make it hide underneath here. Instead of carving right through this, it goes underneath this road and it overlaps it. And this road overlaps this one. So this is going to go underneath. And now I'll turn this one into a little road. And I'll have this road go underneath it. So that can be very interesting as well. So you're adding interest to your work by thoughtfully creating this design. It's not exactly symmetrical and it's not totally planned out, but by thoughtfully creating it, you keep yourself from getting bored and devolving into scribble scrabble and messing up. So let me just go underneath here. And you can see I'm making it up as I go along, but it's very thoughtful in how I'm doing it. And as I'm doing this, I am turning the plate so that I'm always carving down towards myself and the crumbs are always falling below. If you mess up, do not completely resist the urge to repaint it and try again. It's already been carved into, so the indentations are already here. You can feel them. So repainting it is not really an option. But what you can do is modify your design to make it look like you did it on purpose. So I messed up a little there, so I'm going to change my idea a little bit. And no one's to know that that I messed up and that I'm fixing it. They'll just think I changed my mind, or they won't even know. They'll think it was intentional from the very beginning. So you have to be flexible in how your artwork is going to look. If you plan it out too much, you will get frustrated. So it's kind of fun to make it up as you go along and just see if you can create something interesting and unique. So I've seen a lot of art teachers call this sort of design a Zentangle, and that is inaccurate. It is not a Zentangle. Zentangles are something that was copyrighted by a calligrapher a bunch of years ago, and these types of designs have actually existed throughout humanity into prehistory. In fact, I've seen designs like this on pre-Columbian Native American pottery. Pre-Columbian means before 1492, before the age of Spanish colonialism, certainly before European settlers came to the New World. So obviously that stuff was created way before anybody came up with the expression Zentangle. So I urge you to look at Native American Anasazi pottery and different types of designs from around the world when coming up with your designs, and to avoid stereotypical words like Zentangle, which really have absolutely nothing to do with what we're doing here. You can find a lot of linear designs in nature if you look at things like flowers and the veins on leaves. So every human culture in history has come up with similar sorts of patterns and lines. It's a pretty universal thing. So I would prefer not to use the expression Zentangle, and furthermore, that technique is specifically copyrighted by the artists who came up with that method. So I'm certainly not going to piggyback on their artwork by calling anything I do in pottery a name that they came up with. They came up with a name, but they did not come up with the concept of creating linear designs. I started teaching art in 1989, and I was certainly having my students create linear designs way before they came up with the term. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and I will speed up the camera so that you will be able to see the process without wading through the time that it takes me to do it. I will say, though, that continuing to turn the pot so that the crumbs fall off and holding it at an angle towards yourself is key. And having a piece of newspaper or, something to catch the crumbs so that they don't land on your table, and then dumping them off into the garbage is very important, because if you don't do that, you're creating dust particles in your studio, and it's very unsanitary.